Welcome to Wise Beyond Bitcoin, where you come for education, analysis, and opportunities in blockchain and crypto. My name is Lucas.
My name is Ryan.
And I guess today we've got some news, a market update, macro news, which we like to look at the overall big picture. And we also have it's a kind of an opportunity. I suppose we'll get into it. Ryan, you found a really good article about people who are I guess investors in the technology sector, but from a more traditional side. And there is quite a unique perspective that they bring to the table.
Yeah, I would say. So the story is about Andreessen Horowitz, which is a Silicon Valley venture capital firm, and they're kind of engaging in I guess you'd say like a lobbying blitz, and that's how this article describes it. So they've hired a large number of ex-Washington insiders, people who have connections to lawmakers and regulators, and hire these individuals on as advisors and lobbyists for their efforts to get their own version, their own mock up of what a crypto regulatory bill would look like, and they want to have some influence on it, because I guess everybody can tell that the regulations coming and it's going to take some form. And so this is an attempt on the part of one of the largest crypto investors ever. All right. And that's something I wasn't aware of. We'll get into that in a minute, but it's an attempt on the part of Andreessen Horowitz to, I guess you could say, lighten the potential burden of regulation on certain elements of cryptocurrency. And it happens to coincide with companies and protocols that they've invested in. And they've got a large number. It says here over 50 crypto startups have been funded or invested through Andreessen Horowitz. So that's a big number, and they're a big player. And it's cool to see the forces of lobbying and corporate interests on the side of more regulatory freedom, I guess you would say, when it comes to finance, because that's not a trend, right? That's kind of counters the narrative you hear of corporations lobbying for. They tend to lobby for stronger regulations and more burdens and barriers to entry. So the small companies and the startups would have a greater cost, and it limits their ability to compete. And so those established interests protect their profits and their market shares. But in this case, it's a flip, and this established player seems to be looking to open the door wide open to more competition by having a real lightly regulated crypto ecosystem environment. So it's interesting, right? That's something we noticed to be kind of counterintuitive with what you'd expect.
Yeah, and it's great news for the overall crypto space. I love how they point out that they're aware that this cryptocurrency, blockchain technology, it has an impact in sectors that are far reaching and are more than just finance and more than just money. Here's a little part in the article where it talks about that it has the potential to disrupt industries in art, banking, finance, gaming, e-commerce, music, social media, telecommunications, and more. And it's being respected and understood as a new form of communication, a new technology. And like when cars or airplanes, when something is first invented and created, allowing a creative atmosphere, allowing for experimentation to see what works best, because the reality is we don't know. People haven't yet figured out which are the most efficient and the fastest and the lowest transaction on blockchains, and what can be created in DeFi and what can be created with this technology. So it's beautiful that basically the feeling I get from them is that, hey, this is a new technology, and for us to all benefit the most, it's having regulation on this is counterintuitive. It doesn't make sense because we don't really know what we're dealing with yet. So to try to regulate something we don't understand its potential, let it free. And once we can see the sectors and how it operates and where it could use some support and some regulation, where we see that need, then address it. But right now, and like you've mentioned, this is not something that they're seeking in the past. When people seek for lobbying and laws to be made in their favor, it would be to benefit specific stock or companies they own. And they're not stating, hey, we want less regulation on our DAOs and on our cryptos that we're supporting,
invested in, right?
yeah, they're saying we were invested in some, but we think the whole ecosystem would
Should
be
be
better.
free.
And I'll say one more thing before I turn it back over, because this is such a great article and we will link it below. Look, with all the economic labor market competition going on in various jurisdictions and nations over the world, right? United States and for the citizens in the US, like historically, it's been one of the leaders and pioneers in production and capitalism and markets and finance. So it would be sad and silly if, due to draconian or unnecessary oversight and overregulation in a new technology, that other people in other countries, other places of the world, leave this people in the
Yeah, they
dust.
take that role. They take that role over, right? And the United
Yeah,
States
yeah,
would abandon it. Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
because really the people in the U.S. From all sectors, whether in government or not, and as you know, we've talked about, even if you work in politics and you're technically part of that sector, you also shop and spend time with your family. We're all part of all sectors of the market.
You'll still benefit by it, by these innovations, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
There's
So
a we should highlight something in this article, that there's one little detail that would be good to mention. So the legislation draft that Andreessen Horowitz come up with, it includes an exemption for certain crypto companies that are structured along the lines of DAOs, and this is because they're user controlled rather than by a board or a CEO or a small number of people, right? And so the exemption is proposed is to limit these DAOs from being regulated by the SEC and being subject to what's called the Investment Company Act of 1940. And what that would mean is that this would be this would make it to where DAOs would be subject to less reporting requirements and information that they would have to make public. Taxes would be reduced. The tax liabilities are less. What the kind of protections that apply to for consumer protections and the oversight by the CFTC and various entities, that would be diminished as well. So it's clear, and it's clearly trying to carve out this little section of freedom for these asset classes that are structured this way. And so I think that's interesting because, like you say, that's not an Andreessen only benefit. That would benefit any company and any future company that is structured along those lines. So it's very much, it seems to be the opposite of how it's described. If you read this article, there's a regulator from the Federal Reserve who says that Andreessen's draft is clearly not in the public interest and is a bit like trying to have the fox guard the hen house, and it's all about them. They say it's a classic case of asking the fox to guard the hen house, and how it's all about their bottom line, and it's so very much a selfish kind of thing. But when you consider that they're not looking for a narrow exemption, just that it would apply to their companies only, but it would be a whole class thing for anybody, that any company, any future company that would meet that kind of criteria. I don't think it makes sense to say it's a very selfish thing, because while they might benefit in the short term, there's no way of knowing which of those DAOs are going to be successful long term. And if the whole class of companies or protocols would be a better way to say it, if there's a whole class of protocols that enjoys that exemption, I don't see the argument that it's some kind of narrow benefit for just this one, right?
yes, and it could be argued that the fox designing the hen house can be said of traditional finance and the monetary system and central banking and the laws that allow certain institutions and people working in place with licenses to pyramid and print on those reserves that other people don't have the benefit to do. One thing is for sure, when everyone talks about regulation oversight, and it's in this vacuum of belief that you're operating under the same conditions that you're used to. But one of the things about blockchain and cryptocurrency is it's built on security and transparent, open public ledgers. So a lot of the not need for certain oversight isn't because to get away with anything. It's actually because we've got this new
We found a
form.
different way to crowdsource
We found
oversight.
we found a new form of communication as human beings. We found a technology that is on a public ledger. It allows for the utmost irrevocable transparency that you could ask for on certain levels. So it's almost like, why are you asking for a portion of remuneration to be compensated for protecting, when the thieves and those problems that we've had with money value storage before, they don't exist when this new technology is being employed? I think a lot of it is also, understanding the potential and the purpose of the technology is it's not about getting rid of regulation. It's not about that at all. It's about understanding there's no need for certain industries or markets in the same capacity that there may have been before, right? So
I would say that the fact that regulation is like fire, it can be a useful tool and serve good purposes. I mean, we all enjoy clean air and water, but it can also backfire and be a way to the way private interests gain the system and create and do what's called regulatory capture, and use regulations to their own end for their own ends, and it actually becomes uneconomic and a source of instability or wealth inequality or whatever. So it's all, we should be smart about how we apply regulation, because it's not like an unambiguous good. And if you're realistic about its benefits but also risks, then you want to think, okay, well, let's make sure we're deliberate about how we use regulations, and we're conscious about we applying them in a smart way, and we don't create these perverse incentives where some private gain can be extracted essentially from legally, not even a matter of people earning an income, but just by virtue of driving costs up in some industry, they're able to capture it. So there's a kind of like a marginal benefit, marginal cost calculation that has to occur. And it's not clear that any and all regulations just always necessary good.
So true. One more thing about Andreessen Horowitz, their history. They've got a history, like you mentioned earlier, in supporting crypto, but in technology sector in general. They also were one of the earliest supporters, investors in Coinbase, which is one of the largest gateways into various cryptocurrencies for people in the U.S. that I'm aware of. Also,
Uniswap as well is another.
Uniswap, and the reality is, as you mentioned before, this technology has the potential to benefit so many people. I think this is a great inversion of the narrative in the past that lobbying was to benefit a small group at the expense of the many, when now we see, here's an example that a small group is lobbying for a freedom that would benefit people. You could a lot more people than just themselves, and
just that narrow slice. And
it could actually be said that there are some people who would absolutely benefit more than them, because there will be a flourish of protocols and projects that they don't have all their fingers in the pies of, because you really never know.
Right.
Another real bullish thing about this group, as it's mentioned, when they support industries, they don't just throw them money. They don't just supply capital. They help with recruiting, sales, and marketing. So this is just very bullish for the macro picture in crypto. You have enlightened, educated, knowledgeable people spending resources to educate and bring knowledge to those in power of making policies and decisions, so that those policies and decisions cannot leave U.S. citizens in the dust and behind in this technology that is going up. Like airplanes, cars, they're going to be built, they're going to be made. Is your country limiting the production and the experimentation, or is your country saying, no, let's be pioneers and be leaders?
Participate or be on the sideline?
Absolutely. So I think that, there's so much bullish news to garner from this, not just their support, but what this means just for crypto in general.
Yeah.
This means
Well, I'm glad someone's doing this fight because it
totally.
needs to be made, right? But so definitely bullish, and I don't know what else to leave on this, but it's definitely showing you that there's changes are coming, and we need to have all hands on deck in making the case that we should be rational about how we regulate this space. And in that hunt or in that fight, it's welcome. They're a welcome ally.
Amen. I dig it. Well, I think did that cover about most of
Yeah.
the meat of the article? We're definitely going to link it below. I didn't mention this earlier, but I'll go ahead and say it at the moment. This is not financial advice. This is just educational information, entertainment, edutainment. This is a new technology, a new language. We're learning it and we're sharing our perspectives as we understand more, but it's growing so fast and it's more than we can understand alone. So if you know of a project, a protocol, a crypto, some developers working on some neat stuff, and you want to share it with us to share with others, drop in the comments. We'll do our research and potentially post a video on it. We had a couple of videos on airdrops already. So if you like knowing about the macro, the overall picture of what's going on in the world of blockchain and crypto, don't forget to hit the bell and that little notification button. Don't forget to hit the like. Don't forget to make a comment and tell us what you think. And what else? Not financial
Yeah,
advice.
just look out for new videos. Yeah, thanks.
We're focusing on something, that we're about to do some how to's. So if you
Yes,
don't
that's right.
already know, if maybe you're like, oh, I've got Coinbase, I've got this. Well, if you want to know more about how to send your crypto off of Coinbase into your own private Web 3.0 MetaMask or Kepler wallet, we do have tutorials rolling out this week, and not just how to use the wallets and get involved in Crypto 101, but also how to get involved in DeFi and really earn the rewards, because there's a lot of rewards to be involved in crypto.
Indeed.
So,
yeah. Look out for that.
Until the next time, have a beautiful day and namaste.